This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo, giving you the inside track on all the big talking points from Anfield.
Hello and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm Joe Rimmer, your host, and today I'm joined by Sean Bradbury. How are you, Sean?
Not bad, mate. Not bad. Just recovered from COVID, available for selection again. So, all good. Looking forward to a little chat.
Bringing the plane into land again.
Always got to get the lads back from Linz, haven't we?
Yeah.
So,
it's been a while.
Wave them in.
I've seen you landing the plane on the Blood Red pod.
I've got a bit of competition today, though. Keifer's got the cans on as well. My co-pilot over there.
Yeah.
Glad to see.
Well, you've ruined the surprise for any listeners. It is Keifer MacDonald. How are you, Keifer?
Very well. All the better for being here today with Sean and yourself. Plenty to get stuck into. Plenty of planes to land. So, yeah. Very excited.
Plenty of planes to land. Well, Liverpool landed in Austria yesterday, or probably the day before. And after going a goal behind again this season, they won 3-1. It didn't feel as stressful, perhaps, as some of the earlier comeback victories this season, but they got the job done. Sean, what did you make of the overall performance? We'll get into sort of individuals shortly, but what did you like about it? Perhaps what did you not like about it?
Yeah, thought it was really good. Just was quite pleased when the travelling party was first confirmed that, it was clear Klopp was going to take it pretty seriously, get this first game won, send a strong squad over there. And that's the absolute key thing, isn't it, at this point in the Europa League campaign, especially when that first game's away from home. Go, get it won, come back. And I think the way that Liverpool's fixtures now run, with the difficulty of the domestic games ramping up a little bit, especially those two aways, Spurs, Brighton. But, even either side of that, you've got West Ham at home, you've got a derby. It's 4 tough fixtures. To have the 2 Europa League games that are now both home games against the other opponents in the group, who drew last night as well, which is a big plus for Liverpool. It all points towards what, with fingers crossed, would be quite a cosy group stage campaign for Liverpool, which I really think they need. I think for a while we've looked at this Europa League campaign this season as obviously not ideal. Everyone wanted to be in the Champions League, but it really could have its benefits if Liverpool play it right, get out the group, go far in the competition, in terms of, one, domestically helping them, freeing up midweeks where they can rest and rotate. But then the other side of the coin, the second point, is being able to give players game time. And I think that's what the people were down on the first half, like quite severely, judging by some of the reaction on Twitter and from a few people I was speaking to. But I thought it was all right, to be honest. I don't think it was anywhere near as bad as Wolves, when Liverpool probably should have been 2-0 down before the comeback came. I thought it was sluggish at times, but it wasn't awful. There was some joy. There was some decent chances. Nunez header that was somehow saved. Liverpool could well have had their goal in the first half. But overall, I thought it was a good performance. Obviously, the cavalry came on again. That theme continues. Klopp's getting his subs right, even if things from the outset aren't always perfect in games. But I think we have to give him some leeway for that, as I say, as players get used to things and as he tries different things out at this stage of the season. The only thing I say was potentially a negative. I was just a little bit surprised as to how long Diaz played. I thought, obviously the game state in Liverpool kind of not being in front for a good while contributed to that. But I just think now he's such a key man, isn't he, for getting Liverpool on the front foot and really unlocking everything in an attacking sense. That I think that was the first full game he's played this season. So I'd say that was the only thing that probably wasn't ideal, because he has to start against West Ham for that width and threat. But I'm nitpicking there. I think it was a good night. Get that first one on the board and hopefully crack on with the campaign.
Yeah, I agree with you on the first half. I didn't think it was too bad. They went behind to an absolute stunner, which can happen. They had a couple of chances to equalise. It was a bit disjointed, but Keifer, they did make 11 changes. And Sean talked there about the squad, about the cavalry coming on. I mean, I suppose what we've seen so far this season, and probably most in this game, is that unlike last season, perhaps, Liverpool do have a squad that you can rotate and still feel like the team's a threat, that they can win games. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Klopp spoke, didn't he, pre-match about the Europa League, and as Sean says there, that they're always going to take it seriously. And to be honest, judging by Liverpool's squad now, it's not just a team of 11 players; it's 23. They really can't. They couldn't really field a team that would be weakened or viewed as weakened. In years gone by, where maybe you're trying to get yourself into the Premier League top 4, and you've maybe got a Europa League game on the Thursday, as we saw so often during Brendan Rodgers' time, and you're trying to make calls or throw youngsters in or inexperienced players. But Liverpool have, the players they have in attack now, Luis Diaz, Darwin Nunez, Cody Gakpo, Luis Diaz, and then you throw Ben Doak in there who, plays an hour last night. There's just options everywhere, and that's without, throwing in Trent Alexander-Arnold and Thiago Alcantara into that squad. Yeah. So, there is options everywhere. There's quality, strength and depth. I mean, even the midfield, which has undergone 150 million quid revamp, and then you throw the likes of Elliott, who were really impressive last season, and Curtis Jones at the back end of last season as well, who perhaps aren't even guaranteed starters anymore, and they'd been so impressive last season. So Liverpool do have options, and it feels like, as Sean says, it should be a straightforward group campaign for Liverpool. I think they'll be looking ahead now to that home game against USG in a few weeks' time and thinking, if we win that, and then we have Toulouse, who are the fourth seeded side in the group, they got them home and away back to back. That's 6 points then, and then you can look at the final two games of the group where, okay, you may be bringing someone like a Bobby Clark and those kind of changes. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really is positive. We were just saying before we went on air, weren't we, that it was quite a difficult game to assess given those 11 changes, and it's so early in the season. I mean, I thought Endo struggled, and I thought Tsimikas struggled as well. But for their kind of first proper outings, I know Endo's played before, but with 11 men, nice for a change. I mean, there's a lot of players you'd imagine started last night who will be in the frame to play against Leicester on Tuesday, and that will be part of their rhythm, for going into the season. And it's only going to benefit Liverpool, isn't it? But yeah, as I say, there's loads to be positive about, and especially the strength in depth. I mean, I was looking just before the pod actually, and it feels, I'm not sure how you guys feel about it, but it certainly feels as though Klopp's substitutions, obviously they've been on the money, but also it feels like they are coming earlier in games. I mean, the one at Wolves on Saturday, obviously I know McAllister's circumstances around, his travel made him an obvious withdrawal, but to sub someone on at half time felt, something like Klopp doesn't do a lot. Certainly, for kind of like for like, and also a player who's not injured or not had anything I know he was bad, but there was loads of players who were bad on Saturday. McAllister wasn't the only one. Yeah. And then even before that, I mean, I jotted a few down here. I mean, so last night he makes one on 61. He makes two changes, doesn't he? McAllister and Szoboszlai come on against Wolves, obviously half time. Villa, the first sub is 65. Newcastle, apart from Van Dijk's, one being forced into change, I think the secondary sub is on 58, Bournemouth at 63 and Chelsea at 66. So that just kind of shows that Liverpool now, if things aren't going to plan, they can really, look to the bench and kind of shuffle their pack again and go again. And it feels like Liverpool missed that certainly last season. You only have to look at the year they went for the quadruple and did so well in both cups, the kind of strength and depth they had, and with Minamino and Origi and their contributions. So if that's kind of how Liverpool fared with those kind of quality of options, you'd say now, being able to bring a Gakpo or a Diaz or, a Nunez off the bench is another level to that. So, yeah, really exciting times.
Yeah, I saw Andrew Beasley tweeted a stat. Friend of the show, Andrew Beasley, bass tunes to Red. Certainly worth a follow. He tweeted a stat at full time saying that I think in the first half of games, it's been 5-5 this season, and then the second half 10-0. So, Liverpool have shown their quality in the second half and perhaps shown some of their failings in the first half. But it does speak to what you've just said, Keifer, the substitutions, Klopp getting them right, being decisive, perhaps being more confident in his squad and his bench. We'll talk about some of the positives from last night. We'll start with Ryan Gravenberch, who, really impressed me. I thought he was rangy, skillful. I thought the Wijnaldum comparisons might have been slightly lazy before we'd seen him properly play, but having watched him last night, I think it probably does feel quite right. He was very multifunctional, and then got a great assist. What did you make of him, Sean? Obviously, the little scare at the end, but Klopp talked about it just being cramped, so that's good news. But yeah, were you impressed, Sean?
I was, yeah. I thought, it was really good, and his interview afterwards, I thought was really nice. He was clearly buzzing, very very smiley, happy to get his first full debut on out the way for the Reds. And it was interesting, like, obviously long term, it remains to be seen what he becomes as a player for Liverpool. Obviously, as you say, there's a lot to his game, and there'll clearly be a bit of versatility, but there's been talk, hasn't it, about perhaps moulding him into a more of a number 6 and more of a defensive midfielder who's got other strings to his bow. But, he was saying, like, and perhaps this was just the circumstance, it being his first proper start. He said Klopp had said to him in training, just go out there and be the Ryan that everyone knows you can be. It was, a nice little kind of rallying speech like that, where obviously not too much kind of in-depth tactical stuff and this idea of trying to change his position. Like, I think that's to come further down the line. But yeah, he took that on. I think what Klopp's advice and did put a really positive showing in. Obviously got his assist. Saw a stat that I think said he created 5 chances in the time he was on the pitch, which was more than anyone else. Recovered the ball 7 or 8 times. One thing again, I think this is another thing that our mate Andrew Beasley had flagged up, or someone on Twitter. He draws a lot of fouls. But there's something about his game that is able to break up the play like that in a useful way for Liverpool. And that was there. But yeah, I think he was a bit of an eye catcher in a first half where there wasn't a lot of cohesion around him. I think when he got on the ball, he was looking for some interesting angles and passing options, tried a couple of 1-2s. I think he will be someone who'll get in the box and score as well. You can see there was that one move in particular, wasn't there, where if the touch before it was intercepted was right, I think he probably would have got his first goal. Never mind his first assist. So yeah, plenty to build on there, and just seems like a positive character as well to have around the group. So yeah, very pleased with that.
Yeah, a slight little crackle on your helicopter mic there, Sean. Are you flying through a little bit of turbulence?
I'm sorry about that. That might just been because I was excited by Gravenberch. There was just, I'll try and stay still for my next segment.
Yeah. Keifer, what did you make of Gravenberch? I mean, the assist was great, wasn't it? The burst into the box. It felt like he had a bit of pace to get away and then a nice ball across goal. I mean, Sean has covered a lot of bases there, but it really does feel like he's another different style of player in Liverpool's midfield, and they've got players who can do a bit of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing I wrote down just on a few of my notes beforehand was just a jack of all trades, and that's very much what he feels like from his. I know we saw a bit of him at Wolves for a couple of minutes, but last night I thought he was really good, and he's a strong runner, a powerful runner, isn't he? You could see that for the assist when he kind of makes the overlap and gets down the line, and not only to kind of move the team up the pitch in that position, but also get your head up and fire a quality ball across goal is no mean feat. So that was really pleasing, and as Sean says, you could tell how much it means to him. But yeah. I was kind of similar to you, Joe. I saw like a lot of Wijnaldum comparisons, when we signed him, and I can't say I'd seen a lot of him, see stuff of him, clips and highlights whenever he was at Ajax or whatever, but never sat down and fully watched like a full 90 minutes of him. So I was kind of last night, what to expect, but. He, as you say, he did everything, and I think he got wiped out after about 10 seconds. It was a really heavy foul, wasn't it? And it was a lovely little turn. Really good turn to kind of drop the shoulder, and then you see him, picking the ball as the deepest man as well. And then there was a few where he kind of he galloped with the ball into you. I think just before he went off injured, he probably should have released it a bit earlier, a couple of seconds. But the way he made himself up the pitch and drove is something that Liverpool haven't really had in recent years. And certainly last year they lacked legs in midfield. I think that was abundantly clear from all the games they played on the road. They just got just outfought and outran and kind of everything that was wrong with Liverpool. He kind of seems to have signalled last night. So I know it's early days, but it really is pleasing. And I think to have someone who's almost not a utility man, I think that's unfair to say, but someone who you're not building a system around him, but he can be your final piece where, if you need him to sit in a pivot, he can do that as well. If you need him to be an advanced number 8, he can do that as well. And as Sean says, he's made a few runs into the box. Even at Wolves, he could have scored one. I think Diaz probably could have squared it, towards the end. I think there was another one where he got the ball caught under his feet as well. So he looks like he knows where the goal is. And again, that's something that Liverpool haven't, goals from midfield is something they haven't really had since probably Coutinho's time at Liverpool. So, whilst there isn't and it's only been 90 minutes, but there isn't a position where you'd say is his best. And I think Klopp said that himself. He kind of listed everything he's good at. But just to kind of have someone who can tick a lot of boxes, I think it's going to be really handy for Liverpool, especially, in the Europa League, if they are, mashing midfields up and, throwing Elliott in one week, Jones the next, Thiago the next. I think that is really going to help him. That was what Wijnaldum's biggest asset was for the first couple of years until he nailed himself down in the team, is that he could be thrown in, he could turn his hand to any task. Yeah. And then you eventually get to that stage where you are undroppable and then you can maybe refine your game. But yeah, for the moment, for the package Liverpool paid for him, you can see why they were so eager to get that across the line. And it looks like Bayern's loss is going to be Liverpool's gain. Yeah, I
really like the balance they've got in midfield. I like the look of Gravenberch last night. So Bosley for 30 minutes came on, and there was that. There was the elements, wasn't there, in the game, Sean, of Liverpool bringing on the cavalry and some of those players just looking a class apart. I mean, Salah looked like he really didn't belong in the Europa League. He's a Champions League player, isn't he? And he proved it. But Szoboszlai looks great. I love that McAllister can sort of switch play quite quickly and play those sort of passes that get Liverpool straight in the front foot. And then you've got, hopefully Endo, we'll talk about him shortly, but can do the dirty work a little bit. And then promising youngsters like Elliott and Jones. So there's and then Thiago, which we forget about, don't we? Who's to come back, and he'll bring class experience. And if he can keep himself fit, it will make that midfield battle really interesting. But away from the midfield, Sean, for a moment, Darwin Nunez obviously got the equaliser from the penalty spot. Could have scored in the first half if not for a great save. I always find it funny when forwards, like when on commentary, they praise amazing saves, but always say, but he should have scored anyway. I thought, what more could he have done? It arrived at him really quickly. He powered it at goal, and the goalkeeper makes a great save. I don't really think he could have placed it into a corner. But anyway, I thought he was sort of, again, and I thought when he came on against Wolves, it was the same. He was one of Liverpool's most threatening players. Everything good they did went through him. He felt from last season going into this one, he needed a bit of momentum, Sean, and it feels like he's got it. What did you make of his performance, and what have you made of him so far this season?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Nunez of last season compared to this season, for me, there's two changes so far, and one I hope will continue, and the other I'm confident will continue. But one, he just looks more clinical, doesn't he? I mean, he came on against Newcastle and showed that, but there seems to be a bit more certainty to his finishing. I think he's picking better areas, and like you said, with that header, it was a great save. There's not too much that could be done, but the other, he looks a little bit more like he's a bit more of a bully to me. There's been a few times where he's just out-muscled the centre half, powered away from them, use the power and the pace in really good combination. And I think obviously to thrive as a number 9 in this league over the long term, you need both those things, don't you? Especially to keep your place in the team like Liverpool with the options that they've got. So really encouraging, especially because, there's been this long-term question about how does he work in a Liverpool team where you've always had a number 9 who's been a bit false and has, come into midfield like Firmino did, or there was a point last season where it looked like with the new formations change and other things, like I was listening to a Pep Lijnders podcast very recently, and he wasn't digging out Nunez whatsoever, but he was talking up Gakpo about how key he was to the late resurgence last season. And I think there's a question mark around him now. Again, he's just one of the great options that Liverpool have, and he's already scored now. He's off the mark, and his time will come. He'll have purple patches this season, Gakpo. But you're starting to see now, I think, how Nunez fits into this team. And I think a bit of it is one of the other guys you mentioned. It's having Szoboszlai behind him, who's just an absolute... I can't remember a midfielder showing such a range of qualities and settling in so quickly at Liverpool as him. He just looks the complete package, doesn't he? And I think what Liverpool will hopefully be able to do in time in midfield behind Nunez, both in terms of like pressing and taking a bit of that responsibility away from Darwin, and also setting him up, teeing him up, the likes of McAllister and others, finding him with balls over the top or clever ones into his feet, whatever, will be massive. And just the last thing, I know you mentioned Salah as well. That was, I've not seen a cameo like that where someone looks a cut above so obviously from the first time they get the ball to the end of it. And I do wonder whether he just, the Saudi question will rumble on, won't it? And I'm sure if money keeps getting thrown at that league, the quality will improve. But he's got to ask himself, will he be happy if it's that easy every week, or if not easier, and he's playing in front of no one, kicking the ball in the back of the net 5 or 6 times every game? Because, he's a cut above. He's made for the Champions League. And if he gets Liverpool back there this season, then, he deserves a few more seasons in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Keifer, in terms of the forward line, one of the things I really like about it is if you think of Liverpool in their prime under Klopp, it was Salah, Mane, Firmino, and even though they had other people knocking around like Origi, who would certainly play his part before that, Sturridge, who certainly played his part, no one ever really came close to breaking up that front three. Whereas Liverpool's front options now feel like whatever combination you play, you're quite happy with it. You can play a Nunez and you get a different style. Sean mentions Gakpo. I think you get more of a Firmino replicant if you play him in the middle. Diaz gives you width. Salah gives you goals. I mean, it feels like, just like the midfield, it's another area of the pitch that Liverpool have that they can constantly tweak and adapt to whoever the opposition is, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think we said it at in the summer about kind of options and how Klopp, I think we compared it to his midfield in years gone by and said I think long gone are the days where you have a set front three or even a set 11 for that instance. I mean, obviously you have positions like your Alissons, your Van Dijks, your Konatés, your Trents, but in terms of the bigger picture, it very much feels like now, especially like I say with the front line, it's horses for courses. And whether you're playing home or away, a top six opposition, bottom of the league, Luton Town or whoever you are, Klopp has options. And I mean, it was only 3, 4, 5 months ago that Gakpo was, as Shaw says there, was kind of key in Liverpool's resurgence. Going 11 unbeaten at the back end of the season. And obviously Klopp said, didn't he, about Nunez that his pressing, wasn't kind of on song. And all of a sudden there was big question marks about Nunez. And this was only in April, and Liverpool looked invincible, and kind of new life was breathed into them. People saying, well, how does Nunez get back in the team? And then 6 games into the new season, you'd argue Gakpo's the one now who hasn't really had a tune out of him this season. And I know he's been deployed in a deeper role and on the left sometimes as well. He's kind of been the makeshift man. But it just shows you how quickly it can change. And I'm sure, in 6 weeks, Nunez or someone, whether it be Diaz or Jota, whoever, will be going through a bit of a purple patch, and we'll be speaking about, someone else and whatever. So it just kind of all changes so quickly. And I think Diaz is the one at the minute, obviously with Salah, who, the two who you think, they've got to start if they're fit every week. If you're playing a Champions League final tomorrow, Diaz and Salah are the two, aren't they? But apart from that, I mean, you can make a case for all of them. I mean, I really do like Gakpo, and I think that the biggest compliment I could pay to him is that, when Firmino was leaving at the end of last season, I don't think anyone was too worried. And, given everything he had won at Liverpool and how instrumental he'd been over the last 8 years, to kind of let a player not waltz out the door, but, be happy with his decision, that all parties felt was the right time. I think, having only been at the club for 6 months was kind of a massive green flag for him. And obviously he's a completely different player to Nunez, isn't he? Someone who comes, drops into midfield and kind of creates that overload and looks to link passes a bit cuter on the eye. I think Nunez last night, we saw him, as Sean says, he kind of ruffled a few feathers, didn't he? He ran the line, he got his body in the way. It's kind of similar to that goal, the third goal at Wolves on Saturday, when he gets his body in front of Craig Dawson. He did that last night, didn't he? When Gomez plays the ball up and he kind of holds it up and then gives it to Elliott, I think it is, who later plays it to Gravenberch. So there's plenty to like, and I think the good thing is that they're completely different profiles of players. So if you are going to Spurs next week and you think actually we need someone to stifle their midfield and sit on their number 6, you're probably looking at Gakpo. But if you're playing West Ham, on Sunday afternoon, and you think, we're going to have a few chances here, there might be tired legs from Europe, you're thinking Nunez is the one who's going to, flourish from that. So, plenty to be excited about. And I think it just disproves that myth of, you have a set front three now. I think, not only because of the quality that Liverpool have, but also because of player welfare. I mean, Liverpool probably end up playing 60, 65 games again this season. And I think there'll be, the games will be healthily shared out in Liverpool's ranks.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think it's quite remarkable that in the last couple of years we've seen players like Firmino and Mane leave, but the forward line doesn't look weaker for it. If anything, it looks stronger for it. I like that you can play Gakpo in, Spurs is a great example to me of a game that I would want Gakpo to start in. If you want Liverpool to sort of try and retain the ball when they get it and take the sting out of the game. And then if you want to scare a team like Liverpool did with Wolves, Nunez is your man. And then if you're putting a load of pressure on a team and you need to nick another goal, Jota is just great for that, isn't he? So it feels like they've got real options.
Just to jump in on that as well. I mean, I think that the notion, not that you guys have said this, but like quite a few have suggested, Salah's on the decline. Well, he's not, is he? There's goal involvements every game so far this season. I think what you guys said about Gakpo, spot on. I said this on a pod previously, but I think if he continues to develop, not only could he potentially do or ape some of what Firmino did for Liverpool, but because he's comfortable out on the wings as well, he could offer even more. But the point I'd add to what you lads have said is, for me, what you wanted to see from Diaz, he was a constant menace when he first came. Really helped Liverpool so much in that chase for the quadruple by just running teams ragged and being an outlet. But he looks like that killer mentality. Some of those runs that Mane would perhaps make and the positions he'd take up. I know it was a simple-ish finish, the one that Gravenberch put to him, but I think for a little bit it looked like he was like this brilliant player who, if he was going to score a goal, it would be like an incredible one from outside the box, and he wouldn't be getting those easy ones that Mane would make look easy by getting in the right position. If he's doing that as well and he unlocks that side to his game, then you've got potentially two players who can do a lot of what the original brilliant front three did, and the other fella's still here.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think this season we're seeing that a lot, aren't we? And he's making those central runs. That's a great point. And the things said about Salah, it's just, I think it's pure laziness, and it's probably people who don't watch him a great deal and just think of Salah as a goal scorer. When I think if you've watched him over the last, with the exception probably of his first season in which he was phenomenal in front of goal, I think he's always been a much better team player than he gets credit for, and he creates a lot of goals. He causes a lot of panic in defences, and often he gets doubled up on. We see. And that's a good and a bad thing. It might sometimes make his life a bit harder, but it can be a good thing for Liverpool if they want to create space for other players. Keifer, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say that point that Sean made earlier was I hadn't actually thought about that, and ironically, it could actually come back in Liverpool's favour. But as Sean says, the level of Liverpool playing at last night is probably superior to what the Saudi Pro League is at the minute. Yeah. So Salah's coming on with 15, 20 minutes on like he did last night, and he's just how good he was, a class above. He just kind of glides around the pitch, throwing people off the ball. And that goal, I mean, it looked like something out of like Power League, didn't it? The way he just kind of got past all the defenders and just stuck it through the goalie's legs and just kind of, he almost felt embarrassed, didn't he, when he scored? He didn't even celebrate. It was a bit like, here I am on a Thursday, the plane's been landed, I'm here, by, not by choice, but, and that's like.
Who landed the plane, Keifer?
Probably Sean. He's the expert pilot here, I think. This is my first edition with the headsets, but he's probably looking at that and thinking, if I can fire Liverpool back to the Champions League, he's probably thinking I'm not ready for that. I know Klopp said a few times he's marvelled over his kind of physical presence and said he's like Lewandowski, Ronaldo. He can go till he's 37. I mean, what is he, 31? So potentially 6 years, and they won't all be at Liverpool. But there's an argument to say another 3 years at Liverpool, he'd still be one of the best, if not the best, in the league. I mean, we've seen it as you said that he's kind of changed his game from being this ruthless goal scorer. We've seen now this season he's been a bit more of a creator. He's coming deep a bit. I mean, the goal at Newcastle, the ball that he plays to Nunez for the winner, I think it is. I mean, how many times would Salah be on the end of that ball normally? But he's now 10 yards deeper, picking up in those kind of holes. And I know Liverpool were down to 10 men, but it just kind of seemed like last night was almost like a glimpse into the future of like for Salah, and it was a bit like, oh yeah, I don't think he'll want that. So I just thought it was quite interesting what Sean said, because I hadn't actually thought of it like that.
Yeah. Does say some wise things sometimes.
That's our pilot.
Our pilot. Another player that we haven't talked about. We talked about all the forward options. Was one that played last night, which is Endo, who Keifer, I'll stick with you. Who I think brings something completely different again to that forward line. I mean, someone who he does look a little bit of a throwback, and I'm sure as the game will develop as he gets older. Liverpool do like those forwards to come inside and score goals, but he got the byline a couple of times last night, putting crosses that didn't quite find people, but caused a little bit of chaos. And I think Klopp said after the game he would have liked to have seen Liverpool find Ben Doak a bit more often and get him on the ball. But again, it feels like the Europa League's a perfect place for Liverpool to develop Doak as another serious option in that front line, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, Liverpool should I know Klopp, out of respect, didn't say it, but Liverpool should sail through this group, and no matter what team they field, you'd expect them to get 18 points, wouldn't you, more or less? And Doak, as we say now, he's what is he? You've obviously got Doak. You've obviously got Diaz, Nunez, Gakpo, Salah, but Doak is obviously he's not at that level yet. But you can, you're happy to interchange him with Salah, and that's essentially what he is at the minute. He's probably the only one at the club, Harvey Elliott aside, who's capable of playing on the right. I know Jota does it sometimes, but in terms of like a natural right winger, Doak is the only deputy. And as you say, it was difficult, wasn't it? I don't think he had his finest cameo last night, but as I say, he's only 17. Doesn't turn 18 till next month, and it's difficult, isn't it? Because with 11 changes, I think everyone was a bit off song for the first hour or so, and it was only, I think, when they kind of started to form a bit of rhythm, and some of the lads who played a bit more regularly this season, I thought Szoboszlai turned it up a notch. But you now look ahead to Leicester and you think, he'll probably start that, if not, at least get half an hour, and that just further kind of eases his transition into the first team. I mean, he played at Chelsea, didn't he, for the final 15 minutes, but apart from that, he hasn't really played since. He hasn't played at youth level, so he will be rusty. He's obviously played a few times for Scotland, the 21s during that time, but it just now feels that, like, with him, if you can give him these Europa League games and League Cup games every 3 weeks or so, every 2.5 weeks, by the time you get to the end of January, the January transfer window, then you might be looking at a loan and saying, right, going to take the Europa League slightly more seriously now. League Cup, is coming to an end. Not sure where we stand with the FA Cup, but he's done that development at Liverpool. He's done that kind of initial, Klopp's had his eye on him. But yeah, I think he's a really, a really bright player, and he's different, I think, because I think he's fearless, and you see that every time he plays. It doesn't matter who he comes up against. I always think of his Premier League debut when he came up against Luca Digne, and he just let the ball run through his legs. I think that was wasn't his touch, was it? But his first involvement, and you just think it's almost like an arrogance, but it's like not an arrogance in a bad way, but he just he knows that he deserves to be on the pitch, and I just don't think Liverpool have anything like him. I think when Elliott plays on that side, he's a bit more conservative, cuts inside, will give the ball back. I think Jota is a bit more ragged, isn't he? I know some of Doak's touches aren't as tight as they probably should be, but given he's 17, he's good, isn't he? He loves that double step over to the byline, and as you say, the cross. And to be fair, there was one last night where I thought he was unlucky not to get an assist. One kind of flew across, and on another day, someone else is probably there. But yeah, I mean, talking baby steps at the minute, you don't want to throw them into the deep end yet. But this feels like a really nice middle ground for Liverpool at the minute. And then, as I say, it gets to January, and you kind of just, as there will be a few of them, I imagine Bobby Clark as well will be another one where they reassess and think, right, do you go and play 6 months in League One or the Championship? And I mean, as Gerard Quansah's shown, over the past week, that's a good enough level, and it kind of gives you that senior side and that men's game, and you can come back and kind of put all that into a concoction, and hopefully it does benefit Liverpool in the long term.
Sean, any quick Ben Doak thoughts before I ask you about another couple of performances?
Nothing really to add. I'll tell you what, I'll give you one. I'll offer up one. There was one point where I thought, I know Liverpool have got a lot of players who like to play on the left, but when I was thinking about Diaz and the fact that he played the 90, I did think is at some point where we might see Ben Doak on the left, cutting inside on his right, because obviously when we have seen him so far, it's been on the right, hasn't it? But he is different to Salah. He wants to go a different way with the ball, doesn't he? So I don't know whether there'll ever be a point where that will be possible, because there's a bit of a queue, isn't there? That's where Gakpo and Jota perhaps are going to get a look in when Diaz isn't fit. But I wouldn't mind seeing that, even if it was just for like half an hour in a game at one point. So go on, yeah. I found a Doak thought. I thought I was going to struggle then, but there's one for you.
Yeah, come on, yeah, play him on the left, and that's as far as Sean. Stefan Bajcetic made his comeback yesterday, Sean. He played in the hybrid Trent role. There was a lot of chatter about him. It was difficult in the first half, slightly less difficult in the second half for him. But I mean, he probably couldn't have been given a more challenging role, could he, for his return to the team than that? And it'd be quite hard to judge him, Sean, based on that performance, or that role, should I say.
Absolutely. And he's an interesting one, isn't he? Because I think in some ways, in terms of the step into midfield and ping it and, find a long pass to Diaz or whoever and see angles from that type of position, he's got it. I think, he's potentially in that part of the role as able a deputy to Trent as the squad has got. But it's just this idea of, you then have to sometimes cover at right back and cover quite a lot of the pitch, switch position. You've just come back, as you say, you're making your return. So, yeah, there were times that he struggled. And I thought a little bit like this game, and obviously having seen Gomez in that position and what happened in the first half against Wolves, it's a bit like, well, why is Klopp persisting with that when Trent isn't there? But I suppose ultimately it's still a system Liverpool are getting used to, isn't it? And maybe he's thinking, it's for the benefit of all the other players, because when Trent is back, he will be doing that or some variation of that role. So it's not just about the lads who are coming in and filling in that role and whether they can do it. It's just cohesion and everyone else being able to do a job. But I thought that was encouraging. In general, in terms of like cohesion around the team, and this is where I'd move on to the Endo struggles and what people were saying about him. And I really think it was a bit unfair, because to move forward into midfield, obviously we talked about Bajcetic there, but that midfield was Endo, Gravenberch, and Elliott, wasn't it? And that you defend and attack as a unit in the Liverpool midfield, don't you? You press as a unit, and that's never played together. You've got one lad who's making his first full start. Endo's only making his fourth appearance, and one of those was just a handful of minutes off the bench against Villa. One of his other appearances was against 10 men, 4 with 10 men, in a kind of 4-4-1. And okay, he did start Newcastle, didn't he, with Szoboszlai and McAllister, but things are changing for Endo every time he plays. And you've got Gravenberch and Elliott, who I think are, quite attacking players, are quite front foot, aren't they, from what we've seen so far. So I thought it was just a hard job for him. I would make excuses for him. And some people were almost kind of not writing him off as a signing, but really getting stuck into him on Twitter. I just thought it was a bit unfair. He was, at times the only man in the midfield who was kind of looking to defend. And I actually thought the opposition, certainly before they kind of began to tire, early in the first half, when they were at their best, they were managing to somehow press quite high and try and put Liverpool on the back foot. But then we're getting back in numbers. So it was a difficult job for that Liverpool midfield, I think, at times. And in the first half, there was nowhere on the pitch where you thought there's a trio or a triangle that kind of knows each other's games and jobs well. On the left, you had Tsimikas, Gravenberch and Diaz, didn't you? Which is unfamiliar at best. On the right, you had Besetich, as we say, coming inside. Elliott and Doak again. When Harvey Elliott's the senior man of a flank, it's a youthful flank. And then, I just think there was excuses for the lack of cohesion all over the pitch. And it was actually encouraging by the time that the first half ended. Although Liverpool, it wouldn't quite say they were totally on the front foot, but they were becoming the better team. And that was quite encouraging. I think that was probably why Klopp didn't immediately change it for the second half, gave them a little while to crack on. So, yeah, I was pretty impressed across the board there, and I just wanted to give Endo a little shout because I thought he got a bit of harsh stick.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Endo because Keifer and I were chatting about him before you popped into the backstage area. Can we call it a backstage area before the pod? The green room. Keifer, I kind of feel with Endo, what I saw last night, there is going to be a Fabinho sort of settling in period for it because I think it is a tough role. Like Sean says, I think. He was pretty much the only person trying to defend at times in that midfield. He's got several new faces around him. It wasn't the best performance, but where do you stand? Do you think it's around that?
It's difficult, isn't it? I mean, I think first and foremost, he's stepping into massive shoes to fill for Fabinho, and I think anyone who thinks he's going to replicate what Fabinho did at Liverpool is first of all needs to drop that idea. So. I think the only comparison you can make between the two is what you said, Joe, in terms of Fabinho needing time to settle at the start. And as Sean said, Liverpool press as a unit from in midfield and the defend as a unit, and to learn those patterns and those triggers and everything, it doesn't just come overnight, especially when, probably half of Europeans have come playing, new formations when you've only had 10 men. It's difficult, isn't it? I mean, I think the most concerning thing for me was just, I didn't think his positioning was great, but the most concerning of all was how long he took on the ball. There was a lot of needless touches, and he got caught out a few times. And I think
but that reminds me exactly of what Fabinho was doing.
Yeah, I remember specifically Fabinho. There was when they played Chelsea in the League Cup and they lost. I think Klopp went on after and kind of gave Fabinho a bit of a talking down and was like, I don't think we saw him again till. I think they played Cardiff in the October or something, and that was probably 4 weeks or so. And Endo's obviously been thrown in at the deep end because of everything that's happened with Liverpool's midfield this summer. But as I say, it was just more so the touches and the needless touches and here and there, and a few times you kind of just got one through the back of him. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because I don't think the pitch helped anyone last night. I think there was a few times where the ball kind of got caught up. I think especially for the penalty incident, Besetich kind of goes to cross it and then kind of hangs back, and I think that's because he's trying to get an understanding of the kind of the ball and the trajectory of it on the pitch. But yeah, it's difficult. I mean, he's not going to be in Liverpool's strongest 11, I don't think, this year. I think we can very much say now that no matter how much he adapts in the coming weeks and months, I think it will be McAllister there, maybe Gravenberch in the long term. But I think McAllister's the one Klopp trusts, and just because he's a tidy footballer, he can operate on 1 and 2 touch. He's played in different systems. He's a World Cup winner. His pedigree kind of speaks for himself, and I know he's still learning on the job. And I don't think we've seen half of what McAllister will be capable of Liverpool, but I think he's not been a glaring red flag at the base of midfield. You've not been thinking, oh my God, Liverpool are going to fall apart here. I think he just does the job. He's probably a 6 and a 7 out of 10 at the minute. In due course, hopefully if he moves, into this left-sided number 8 position, we might start seeing 9s and 10s. But I think for the moment, it's firmly going to be McAllister. And then, you're probably looking at Gravenberch in, as I say, probably after the next international break is when he'll start to get more minutes, you'd imagine, in the Premier League. And then, if you are playing Endo in these Europa League games at Anfield and stuff where you are going to have 90% of the ball and whatnot, I think that is fine. That's fair enough. And you'd argue that's probably better than the squad depth that Liverpool have had previously. So it's one of those, it gets to the stage where if he does start playing at Old Trafford or the Etihad or, the Emirates in your 6-pointers this year, then that's when I think you can maybe pick his performance apart and be like, he should never be in this position. But for the meantime, as Sean says, it's pretty hard to kind of judge him off, 300 odd minutes where probably 150 of those have come with 10 men or so. So not the most pleasing signs last night, but I'm sure he'll kind of find his way and find his pace into kind of English football soon enough.
Well, it's West Ham on Sunday. Before we pick our teams, stop me if either of you have any burning thoughts about West Ham, because I've got a couple I want to say. I mean, first of all, I think they've got a pretty good squad. Looking through the players now, I think Moyes has done a really good job there. They've developed into quite a handy football team. They have a bit of steel about them as well. I think it will be a very tough game at Anfield on Sunday. Kudos looks really good. Bowen has got a virus, so he might not play, but if he does, I think he's great. Liverpool have obviously been linked and have looked at him in the past, and I really think Bowen. I think if Bowen moved to Liverpool tomorrow, I think you'd see him go up a level, and I think he'd be really good for Liverpool. I don't think he will ever end up at Liverpool, because I think now he's 26, and if they were to look to buy a replacement for Mohamed Salah, maybe that ship has sailed a little bit, but really like him. But the other point I want to quickly make is I really think I'm really pleased with Liverpool's midfield this summer, the signings that they've made, but I'm convinced they missed a trick in not signing James Ward-Prowse. I still think he'd be a great Shaqiri type option in the squad. Has made an impact already at West Ham. Is a great, I know it feels like a bit of a lazy thing to say about him, but set pieces are a huge weapon. And I think if you were, I don't know, needing a goal in a game, and you brought him off the bench and got a free kick, a corner, anything like that, he'd be a great asset. And I think he presses well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's like on Sunday. Any pressing thoughts on West Ham before we pick teams, gents?
I kind of agree with you on Ward-Prowse, and I do wonder whether it maybe just, not saying Liverpool were in for him, and he in many ways wouldn't have fitted the profile, would he? But a homegrown midfielder would have been useful. Whether it was just something about minutes, because not only has he gone there and instantly slotted in, which I suppose partly you'd expect going to the same kind of league, but already feels like he's a bit of a fan favourite and a bit of a hero, doesn't he? And as you say, he's a very effective player. But no, I'm kind of, he's got the Everton connections and United. Moyes, on paper, he's someone that like maybe a lot of Reds wouldn't like. But I go back to the celebrations when they won in Europe last season. I think he's a good bloke, and he's kind of good football man, and he's one whom you kind of think is the game. A few years ago, I thought as the game maybe caught up with him a little bit, and as he got a kind of swan song in him, and another good run with the club. But I think he's got that, and as you say, some of the additions to this West Ham team and the journey he's taken them on, especially when last season looked like he might not see the season out at certain points. They looks like they're building on the momentum of the European win quite well, and I think they'll be quite dangerous on Sunday.
Certainly, yeah. Okay, Keifer. Alisson returns in goal, I'm sure. What's your back for?
I've gone for Gomez, Konate, Van Dijk and Robertson. Gomez purely just for the fact of, I think I said it to you before, Joe, but I'm not a huge fan of this new inverted fullback, especially when Trent isn't playing. Yeah. But I thought Andy Robertson looked all the better last week for kind of returning to his former duties, where he was allowed to kind of get up and kind of act as another attacker. And obviously gets the goal against Wolves, doesn't he? And I think I'd said in the summer that I had not concerns about him, but certainly if Liverpool were looking at this hybrid system long term, I did maybe worry where Robertson's, especially at the age he's at now, I did maybe worry what his future looked like. But he's answered those critics really emphatically. As I say, kind of drove that comeback last week, didn't he, at Wolves, and he's just impressed. And I think for to get the best out of him, as we see with Trent, sometimes Robertson has to be the conservative one, but I think him and Gomez in a pair, I think that really allows Robertson to return to maybe like 2019 Robertson, where his numbers are really good, and I think they drop off a lot last year. But I just think he needs that freedom if he is going to, he's not someone who's going to sit in and tuck in and be a left-sided centre half. He's not limited as a footballer, but he's certainly not Trent Alexander-Arnold. And I think for that case, he's very good at the basics. He's very good at getting the ball out of his feet, playing a 1-2 and getting around his man. He's very good at whipping the ball into the box. And I think, he's someone who does set the tempo on that side, doesn't he? And I think, we're talking about sluggish starts and slow starts that have caught Liverpool cold at times this season. I just think if you can get Robertson, someone who loves to press high up in the faces, I think, it would make Liverpool's play all the better. So for that, Gomez comes back in for me.
I'd go along with that back four. Sean? Yeah,
I think that's probably fair. Gorsley did a piece on Alexander-Arnold's potential return a couple of days ago, and he was seen back out on the grass, wasn't he, on Wednesday, albeit not training with the main group ahead of the Europa game. And Gorsty's steer was that it was 50-50 for Sunday whether he'd be back. Yeah, I think Gomez. If there's any question over his fitness, you bring Gomez in, don't you? And I certainly agree with the rest of them. I think it would be a massive advantage if Trent was good to go for this one, and then obviously you can rest him in midweek for the Leicester game. But yeah, maybe safety first.
Well, what's your midfield, Sean? Stick with you.
This one's really difficult because I mean, obviously Szoboszlai starts. I think Jones definitely starts, given he didn't get a minute, did he, in the Europa League? So he's ready and raring to go. For me, it just comes down to who's holding for you, and to throw Bajcetic straight back into that in what will be a bit of a midfield battle against West Ham, I don't think you can do. So I think I'd go with McAllister, Szoboszlai, and Jones, but I might be tempted to drop Jones deepest, which maybe would be a bit kind of counterintuitive because obviously, Klopp has tended to put McAllister there, hasn't he? And whilst Wolves clearly came too soon for him after his mountainous exertions on the international break, he did well against Villa, didn't he? So it'll be those three, but yeah, I just wonder what way they'll line up those three.
Yeah, I'd go almost exactly right along with that. Keifer, what about you?
Yeah, the same. I think we can see now. I think Jones is firmly in Liverpool's first choice midfield. Certainly, when Thiago isn't there, so I think he's kind of got that place on the left nailed down. I think McAllister and Szoboszlai, the two new lads, they've not put a foot wrong. I know McAllister wasn't great last weekend, but obviously circumstances around that. And I think as well, if you have Szoboszlai and Jones, as we saw at Wolves, if things aren't going Liverpool's way, I think it allows you to tweak it and go to, if you both want them to sit in a pivot, and then you get the four lad, go to a 4-4-2 essentially, and that's what they did last week for the second half. So I think not only their quality, but also that tactical versatility they all hold. I don't think you could, say the same with Harvey Elliott. I don't think he's as disciplined enough to sit. So I just think, Jones maybe having that extra string to his bow, nudges him ahead in this one.
Yeah. Okay. What's your forward line, Keifer? It's probably maybe the trickiest part of the team.
Yeah, Diaz, as I say, I know he played probably more than we all expected yesterday. But I think he's got to start. As I say, I think he's always him and Salah. I think have got those two positions nailed down. So Salah's on the other side, and then gone with Nunez. I mean, a lot's been made of confidence and the Europa League being able to breathe new life into him, and he had the goals at Newcastle a few weeks ago, and then started against Villa and was unlucky not to probably get a hat-trick that day. I mean, he sets up one for the own goal. I think he hits the bar with another, and I think he came close to the second half when Salah clipped one to the back post. So there was momentum build, and he just wasn't fortunate enough to get on the score sheet. And now he's obviously had this goal in midweek. If you can kind of follow that up with a game against West Ham where I don't think they have the squad depth that Liverpool have, so potential there to be tired legs, and we are talking about a fast start. If you've got Darwin Nunez running at you at 2:05 on a Sunday afternoon, don't think it's going to be the most enjoyable experience. So yeah, throw Nunez in there alongside Salah and Diaz.
Yeah, again, I would agree with that. I like Nunez at the moment. I like his form. I think he does feel like he needs a bit of TLC in terms of keeping him in the team and showing him he's important and rewarding him for good performances, which I think he's been putting in. Sean, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean that is absolutely the three I would play, and I totally agree with what you just said about Nunez. Obviously, Salah starts, and Diaz. I just think if West Ham come and sit in a bit, which they will, 4-2-3-1, 4-1-4-1, maybe you just need him to stretch them and break them down. But Gakpo and Jota, both unused subs on Thursday night. I don't see how one of them doesn't start in a way. Albeit there is, your Klopp could be saying to them, well, sorry lads, not this weekend, but you're both leading the line for us on Wednesday night in the Carabao. But yeah, I suppose if there's anyone, going back to what I said at the start of the pod, if there's any one of those three who maybe the position is in such shape, yeah, it might be Diaz just because he has played the 90. So maybe Gakpo could slot in for him, and either him or Nunez can maybe be on the left if Diaz is kept on the bench. But yeah, I hope he goes with those three from the start and try to kind of change the narrative a little bit and get Liverpool on the front foot and ahead early, and then make his changes rather than the other way around.
Give us your prediction, please.
I'm going to say 2-0 to Liverpool, which would be a bit of a shock if they didn't go 1-0 down and then come back, as has been the theme all season. But given West Ham played as well on Thursday night, and okay, they just about managed to compete on two fronts last season, but hopefully that's a bit of a shock to the system for them, and Liverpool can capitalise. Yeah,
Keifer?
2-1. I think West Ham they look good going forward. I think they've scored in every game or near enough every game this season, so they'll be a threat. I think they might be able to catch Liverpool out cold. Hopefully not, but I just think Liverpool have too much, whether that's coming from behind or, certain an early lead. I just think that firepower up front, no matter what other areas of the pitch, if they're, not as stable as they should be, I just think Liverpool's attack is the best around, and they'll score goals.
Yeah, agreed again. I think it will be a bit of a scrap for Liverpool on Sunday, and West Ham will make things difficult, but I think they'll get the job done 2-1 up. 3-1 probably. 2-1 I initially thought, but Liverpool seem to be able to snatch that late goal just as teams are pushing up and trying to get one themselves. So yeah, 3-1. We'll be back on Monday to talk about the West Ham game, to look forward to the world's greatest cup competition, the League Cup against Leicester. And thanks very much, gents. Let's bring the plane down safely, and we'll see you next time. It's all right.
You've been listening to the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.